Hey, everybody. Welcome in. It's Friday and a beautiful day here in the Mile High City. I'm Jesse Montano. I'm going to be joined by Meghan Angley in just a moment. We got a fun show for you guys today, but I do, of course, want to remind you guys about our great partners over at Trusted American Mortgage. Head on over, trustedamerican.com right now. They want to help you lower your interest rate, get a better monthly payment. So head on over, trustedamerican.com, see how much money they can help you guys start saving right now today. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hey, everybody. Welcome in. It's Friday afternoon. I'm Jesse Montano. She's Meghan Angley. This is Guerrilla Sports Off Ice, brought to you by Trusted American Mortgage. Whew. Did you get out in the sunshine at all today this morning, Meghan?
I did not.
Did not. You answered that like you're an anti-sunshine person.
No, I'm very pro sunshine.
My wife has a friend who's she's a PA for dermatology. And so she is like, I love being outside, but don't let the sun touch my skin.
I used to be a lot more diligent about that. Like
Yeah.
I would bring an umbrella to the pool if I wasn't guaranteed shade.
See, now I like the sun. But when I go to the pool with my wife, I do very quickly tire from sitting out just in the direct sunlight.
You know what I do like? Very specifically, going from an air-conditioned place into a hot car.
Yes.
That feeling
Yes.
is so amazing. And it involves the sun. That's why it's relevant.
I'm so with you. Like I almost just like I like that suffocating heat.
Yes.
So just a few
Just
seconds.
a second.
And then you turn the AC on, and then like the AC, it's like the counterbalance just
Yeah.
constantly. So I just feel you. I feel you. Meghan, we got a fun show today. We had to kind of pull it together at the last second at the beginning of the week. But I was able to sit down with AJ Oscarson from Fresh Tape Media. And he was the guy, as you'll find out here in this interview, going through the last 2.5, 3 years with Gabe Landeskog as they were putting together a clean sheet. The docuseries that has followed Gabe Landeskog on his recovery. Meghan, it was one person. And there's a fun little story behind it, but it was one person who captured everything, who followed Gabe everywhere. And that was AJ Oscarson, who we get the chance to talk to today. And, one of the things I told him, and I know you and I have talked about this, is just like, we cover this team. We're around them a lot. We feel like we know what's going on, but there was so much happening behind the scenes with Gabe Landeskog. We all just thought like, rehab, treatment. There was so much going on. And it's just so fascinating to hear about all of it.
Yeah, I think there were people who weren't sure about Landeskog for Masterton because it's a regular season award and he hadn't even played in an NHL game at that point. But at that point, we still had information from a clean sheet, knowing what he went through behind the scenes during the regular season. And I still point to the conditioning stint with the Eagles, which happens in the NHL regular season as part of this comeback story. But there's so much more that led up to that point. And we had the benefit of knowing a little bit because of a clean sheet.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's such a well done piece of content. Big shout out to our friends over at Fresh Tape Media, who are right down the street here in Denver. They did great work. And as fun as it's been to watch, it was really fun to get to hear a little bit more about it. And the series isn't quite done yet, Meghan. I don't want to say anything else. So I was gonna say there is one more episode coming out. You guys had some fun on Pucks and Prosecco talking about Gabe, and we'll just see. Anything else, Meghan, before we get into this interview with AJ Oscarson, who was the man behind the lens with the clean sheet?
No, roll the fresh tape.
Meghan's on a roll today. Here we go. This is AJ Oscarson from Fresh Tape Media. Peeling the curtain back on what it was like to follow Gabe Landeskog around for the last 2.5 years. All right, very lucky and excited to be joined today by our guest. if you've been watching A Clean Sheet with Gabe Landeskog on TNT and Max, you are seeing the man behind the lens on all of it. Credited director, writer, producer, AJ Oscarson of Fresh Tape Media. Thanks so much for parking some time to come in and chat about what I'm sure was a crazy experience.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, congratulations on just the entire documentary, the way it's all gone. It's been incredible to watch, and I imagine playing the role that you've played, and it's been pretty fun to see the response and just the way that everyone's kind of embraced it.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah.
I think in February, maybe late February, we actually signed the deal, and it was out March 9th. And then 5 weeks in a row. It's just been a dead sprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, wow, February. So it kind of came right up to the line there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is incredibly complicated deal, as you know, in sports media.
Sure.
It's like we wanted clips from the NHL, so that was a thing. And then, you got to work with folks at Kroenke and Ball Arena, and, it airs on TNT and then re-airs on Max. And then it was important for Gabe that it airs in Canada and Sweden as well. And so that was, there is no HBO in Canada.
Right.
So then what do you do there? And then, NHL rights in Sweden are different, so it has its own channel there. So how do you get those folks, that and all of that, and try to doing it on a shoestring budget on a very short timeline has been interesting.
Yeah. I mean, being in the video production side of things, it's the timeline to me that's more impressive than anything else for you guys turning stuff out. But AJ, you and I have gotten to know each other a little bit here over the last couple months, running into each other around the rink a lot. Yeah. I guess before we get into the how and a lot of what was this experience like for you? I guess just let's just start there. I mean, this is a story that a lot of the hockey world's been paying attention to, and you've been in the middle of all of it.
Yeah. I think just personally for me, as someone who loves telling stories in media and sports, it's been a project of a lifetime. Yeah. Really intensely. We worked on it for 2 years and really closely with Gabe. And yeah, what I think he's been able to do with it has just been phenomenal. He's got a lot of opinions on how it should look and everything, and what he wanted to get across. And when we started talking about it, June 2023 was our first shoot. He was just really focused on, like, it just can't be like a bunch of montage of me working out.
Yeah.
He's like, that's not a realistic arc of what rehab really looks like. And we didn't even know June 23 what was all going to happen. And then to see it all come, I was like, well, he was really, smart on that.
Yeah.
Really, really smart.
Good foresight.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, just kind of like knowing that, like, this is not a typical injury. This is not going to be a typical story. And like, let's strap in.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's as someone who's been covering this from the media perspective, the craziest part for me, and again, like we always knew from a media perspective that there was stuff going on behind the scenes that we didn't know about, rehab and stops and starts and workouts and setbacks and things like that. But just how much was happening behind the scenes. Because again, like, I'd see Gabe, I'd say semi-regularly around the rink. Obviously you guys, you'd be traveling, he'd be going here and there, and there were some stretches where he was gone for a while, but we'd see him around. To see how much was going into all of it, like you said, like good on him. So he was pretty involved in it from, like, in the creative process from the start. Yeah,
I mean, we spoke, very candidly of what we wanted it to look like, and it started. One of our phenomenally talented producers, Avalon Koenig, the photo on Instagram he posted right after the surgery, laid up in the, I guess not boot, but cast kind of, and just, sent him a message of like, hey, we're pulling for you. And we've done a lot of stuff with abs and nuggets and stuff. So we kind of knew him a little bit, it wasn't just a cold message. And he's like, oh yeah, if you ever want to tell a story, let's talk. And And so it just started there, and he's like, I'm going to Philly. It's in the first episode. It starts off right in Philly. And yeah, and I showed up and like went to the, kind of apartment he was staying at over that duration. And, as like, we could tell an injury story, guy gets injured, guy works really hard, guy comes back. But he's like, I just don't think that's just not accurate. He's just not very interesting. He'd been keeping these journals, which were really personal. And he wanted it, that was kind of the biggest thing, is he really wanted it to speak to folks who might be in a similar position. Yeah. And not in like that hyper specific knee injury, right? I mean, that's like a wild thing. But anybody who was like kind of mentally struggling or physically struggling and wondering, what comes next. That like, I think doing something, in Gabe's instance, playing hockey since 4 years old, at 30 years old, all of a sudden, like, well, you can't play hockey anymore. Well, that's different, And I think we had talked about like, again, that's really specific, but I think there are any number of stories of somebody even plays recreationally or does a job or does something, and something just changes. And that unknown is really what the story was. And, we showed up to Philly, and it was like me, another cam operator, and an audio operator. And after maybe 2 days of filming, he's like, this is not going to work. He's like, you can't get in the way of anything. We knew to tell a story, we had to be in his home around his family. And he's like, I'm not going to bring multiple cameras and a, audio op who's got a boom operator, in the house. And he's like, if we can do it with just yourself and one camera as small as possible, we can do it. And I think that really kind of changed what it was, because a lot of the things you see in the show is we're just, in a lift driving to a doctor's appointment, we're waiting in a doctor's appointment, and it's just a lot of that kind of stuff. And I think it just kind of makes it a little bit more personal.
Okay. All right. I'm so glad you brought this up, because when I first heard about what you guys were doing, genuinely, that was my first thought. I was like, wow, I can't believe Gabe's going to have this whole camera crew going around with him. And then when I first started watching it, I immediately, the thought that was going through my head was, this feels very personal. I'm really impressed they pulled this off. This whole crew, but this feels really tight knit. Yeah. And then you and I met, and we kind of started talking. You were like, "Nah, man, it's me. It's me. That's it." And it honestly, it made sense. And genuinely, I'm not just saying this to you, I think that was the right call. I feel like it added. It was the perfect. Like, that was the way this story needed to be shot and told. Yeah. And I'm sure for you guys, obviously you don't learn that till after, but just wow, what a great call to have it done that way, because not only did it sound like it fits for him better, but like I said, I think it struck the right chord.
Yeah, I think, there's so many documentary or reality work out there that, you hear folks saying all the time, oh, you get used to the camera, you get used to the camera. I was like, do you?
Yeah, right.
Do you? I spend 80 hours a week around cameras. I don't know if, you just can't put a camera in a room and everyone's going to be the same.
100%.
And I think adding folks just increases that. And it was really important for myself and for Gabe that, it would have been cheaper and probably easier and faster for everyone if it's like when he was in Toronto or Philly or Calgary. It's like, we'll just, grab somebody with the camera and put him there. But we just really didn't want to do that, because like, you wanted to keep that line of questioning, you wanted to keep that rapport, and also you just wanted to be really sensitive. Kids when we started, were really small. I mean, they're still really small, really small, and you just don't want to be bringing people all the way around. It's just kind of like, no, it's a home life.
100%.
It's not a set, and I think it just looks a bit different than I think a lot of the sports documentaries are used to seeing, that are like big and glossy, and they're stunningly beautiful, and they're great stories. And we just wanted to do something a bit different. And like, it's not overly pretty. It's not like glossy, it's just like a really small camera. It's, a Sony FX6 and then 2 lenses, that's it.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I really did. I felt like it it felt appropriate, you know, the way that it watched. I agree with you though. Like as someone who spends a lot of their time on camera, there is just because it's the camera and it's the light and then it's the mic and you just
see
know
the red light and you're like,
right.
you know, you just have a half second more delay. You're like, is that the right word? You know, that type of thing. We wanted to like, as much as possible, remove that as a barrier.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just that extra little voice in your head that says, "Oh, they're recording what you're saying," and yeah, don't say that. The camera's on. No, so I totally get that, and again, for this type of thing, again, to me, it's about the story, and I think it looks very pretty and very glossy. I think it looks great, but you know, to me, it is about. You can have all that stuff, but is the story right? Did you tell it in the right way? And I can't remember what exactly the line is that he uses, but what you alluded to a minute ago of like, no, this is meant to just be representative of anyone who's going through it and just doesn't know what tomorrow looks like. And you know, we run a small business here, and I drew a lot of great inspiration off that as well. So again, I think you guys struck the right chord. But you know, you just mentioned 3 different cities there. Oh, what if it's Toronto, Philly, Calgary, add in Denver and Sweden. Yeah. For you, you and I have chatted a little bit about this, so I'm cheating a bit, but man, oh man, this seems like it was probably a bananas schedule for you.
Yeah. And I mean, it's so fun.
Yeah.
You know, it's not lost. I mean, what an opportunity it is. You know, I think I've spoken with so many people who, you know, we all, you know, in the media, we all want access, you know. Because folks are rightly guarded, you know, and it's such a great opportunity. But yeah, I mean, he's an immensely busy person, right?
I'm sure.
Immensely. It's crazy. He goes from 5 a.m. till 10 p.m. every day. And you would never know, you know, I've never seen him tired.
Yeah.
Somehow it's wild. But yeah, I mean, that also just means that, you know, especially going through this kind of rehab process, it's, you know, go film a skate and his knees sore. You know, I think in like episode 5, we kind of get into that. Does a really good skate, getting really close, you know, and then all of a sudden does a skate, knee hurts. All right, well, what does that mean? You know, he talks to Martian, who's great professional. And they're like, yeah, we got to go to Toronto, you know. And he just, you know, I'll be filming with him. And he's like, it's Monday night, I think. And he's like, what are you doing Wednesday? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, great, we're going to Toronto. All right, cool. You know, and we had one where I was on a different shoot in Vermont or something. And he's like, oh, I'm going to Cale Makar's house. I was like, great, I'll be back in Denver tomorrow. And he's like, no, Cale's house in Calgary. It's like, all right. I'll be there too, you know? And I took like a 3 a.m. flight from Burlington, Vermont to Calgary. Yeah, through like Chicago, something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult schedule. You know, we talked about the timeline a few minutes ago. Of just like the post-production timeline, just absolutely brutal, but like no complaints. Yeah. You know, it's just so fun. Yeah, and it's just so great to do.
Well, and like you said, this is what you had the opportunity to do is what everybody in this space wants to do. And, you know, there's times where, you know, to different extents, we have to have that conversation in this building as well. Like, hey, it's really late and we're all tired and we're all going to be up the next morning. But like how many people like would give anything to switch positions with us type thing. But yeah, Vermont to Calgary in the middle of the night. I'm sure that was one when you were on the plane, like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
A little bit.
And then I showed up. And I thought it was, you know, he just gives me an address, you know, and I didn't, you know, I was like, oh, this is where he's staying, you know, not realizing he was staying with Cale. I mean, they're so close. I should have thought of that. I knock on the door, you know, on no sleep, all this camera gear and everything. And then Cale opens the door and I was like, oh, hi, you know, Cale Makar. And of course, Cale Makar is like just the nicest human in the world. Yeah. She's like, oh yeah, good to see you again, AJ, come on in. It's like, well, what's going on? And Gabe's like, oh, great. I was just about to go for a ruck. And he puts on like a 15-pound vest and he's like, we'll go for a run. And I was like, all right, well, I'll be here when you get back.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you can go for a run with me. He's like, oh, yeah, let's go. You know? And it's one of those things of like just dead tired, like wearing boots, you know, running through, I think, West Calgary, trying to keep up with Gabe Landeskog.
Yeah.
And trying not to look like a fool in front of Gabe Landeskog and Cale Makar. Can't imagine I succeeded. It's just 95 degrees, running, trying to ask questions. But yeah, I mean, what an opportunity.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So
I
that-
just, I imagine, yeah, going through your head as you knock on the door and Cale Makar's on the other side of it. Oh, welcome to, it's like, yeah. Cause like you said, you're at 5 a.m. after
Yeah.
you just take an overnight flight, you're not thinking about, well, whose house is this?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. You can go for a run with me. Oh, can I?
Yeah. I was like,
Excellent.
I think even without camera gear, you could wear a 50-pound vest. I can't keep up, but sure. He's very kind and he like clearly slowed down, but like
Yeah.
struggling.
I'm on it. I'm genuinely impressed that you even did it. I
Yeah.
don't, I feel like I would have been like, oh man, like, I don't know. Do you have a golf cart I can
Yeah.
go next to you on?
Yeah.
What did you know about Gabe before you started doing this?
I think probably what a lot of folks see, you know, I think, but probably even like less than what like yourselves or some
Right.
other folks at Gorilla are familiar with, like just kind of the headlines, you know, he is kind of a public personality, but he's not in public,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So not much, honestly.
Yeah.
It was, you know, we were talking about this just last week, Gabe and I, of like, it's a bit, I couldn't believe the kind of the risk he took, you know, because
No
like he
kidding.
had kind of seen me, he knew Fresh Tape. Fresh Tape is kind of all over in Avs world and everything. We love hockey. And so we'd done a lot of like the in-arena stuff, you know, and so he knew us from that. And he's a consummate professional. So he remembered folks year over year of like, oh, you know, Gabby, how's the kid? And it's like, how do you, the amount of people,
Yeah.
you know, wild. And so like he knew that I ran a camera for Fresh Tape,
Yep.
you know, and then I showed up, at his temporary apartment in Philly. And it was like, yeah, what I'd like to do is put this camera in your face for your best times, your absolute worst times, and just see what happens.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going to keep rolling and keep asking you really uncomfortable questions and just be like, I'm AJ, by the way.
Yeah. And also, if you don't remember, I mean, yeah.
And he was, to his credit, he's like, yeah, if that's what it takes to get this version of the story,
Yeah.
he's like, I trust you. And I think part of my, you know, being down to just drop everything and leave or run through Calgary 95-degree weather camera gear is wanting to respect that trust he put in us and in Fresh Tape of, you know, he held up his end of the bargain. You know, he's very candid. I think if you've seen the show, like episode 4, I thought was like really brutal in some of the moments that are there. And like, he didn't have to share that with the camera, knowing that we were going to put it somewhere, you know, not at the time we didn't have a deal, but like the goal was to put it somewhere, and he held up his end of the bargain. So like, we'll do the same.
That's amazing. And part of the reason I asked that was because he is, you know, him and Cale, like they're such great guys. Like as much as this is like, I don't know of a worse person that all of this could have happened to, you know, Gabe, just the pro that he is. I don't know if you could have had a better person do this part of it, where, you know, going through the documentary process with you and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is kind of odd. It's, you know, he's almost like you know, you never want to see anyone injured, but it's interesting, you know, speaking with Melissa, his wife, and it's almost like not good, but like the way he's been able to work through it, you know, and speaking with like the trainers and the Avs organization and stuff of like, he would come in, you know, over those 3 years or 2 years, you know, post surgery, do workouts when he could, you know, when it would be safe and everything, and still just hyper motivated, really positive, you know, really good playing that role of the captain of like hyping up the guys, talking to the guys, you know, he does his homework off the ice and everything. And like, I think in speaking with one of his trainers, Alexi, he's like head strength trainer in Avalanche, you know, most folks couldn't do that, you know?
Yeah.
And to go through I think there was probably like 3 times we kind of demarcated in the show of like about to come back, setback, about to come back, setback. And I mean, how many times can you
Right.
do that? And yeah, I think he's just kind of a special person, and that like you kind of have to be able to take that on the chin and just kind of go, all right, well, what's next?
Yeah,
is astounding.
And like you said, the mental strength that it takes to do that is wild.
Yeah, I would have given up a couple weeks. Like, this is a lot of work.
Yeah, this is too much. This is too much.
It's a lot of pain.
Yeah.
You know, time away from family and all that stuff. And like,
I'm good.
Yeah.
You mentioned, you know, sticking a camera in the face in the good times and the really bad times and asking the tough questions. Even doing what you do and you know, being the storyteller that you are and knowing, were there times when even you were like, I don't want to film this, I just want to shut this moment off? Or did that, I mean,
there's some times, yeah, I think both on the positive and probably on the, I don't want to say negative, but harder.
yeah.
You know, there's some times of like, I spent, I don't know how many days and days, right, over the course of 2 years, like at their house in Toronto and in Denver. And like, yeah, there are just some times of just playing with the kids where it's like, I'm just going to stop recording and like, just let the family play in the pool,
Yeah.
you know? And we have plenty of footage, you know, and stuff like that, or just let them be,
Yeah.
you know? Which I thought was really fun, you know? And then, you know, I think the toughest time was that home opener this past season in 2024, where it just caught me off guard. You know, like in my head, it was like, oh, Gabe's going to go out, you know, for an announcement to be, you know, Gabe Landeskog captain, and everyone's chanting Landy, and I was like, boy, this is going to be has to be such a great moment, you know, working in the shadows for so long and so hard, and knowing, you know, the background of the setbacks and everything. This must be such like a positive affirmation, you know, and then to realize that like it's kind of one of those worst days in the 3 years, and then to like put that on camera, I was stunned.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't really know I wasn't expecting it, because I was probably in the mindset of everyone else at Ball Arena, like, this is amazing, it's home opener, Gabe's here, let's go. You know, he's in a suit, but like still he's here, you know, and all of that. And, you know, it's a fresh season. And then to realize that like he was just really struggling. It was having to make a decision really quickly. Should this be recorded? Ultimately, they ended up doing it, obviously, and it ended up in the 4th episode. But yeah, I mean, I was up all night debating, like, was that the right call? How does Gabe feel about it? You know, I went to his house the next day, and it was like, so obviously I was there and I captured it. You know, I can delete it. I'm the only one who knows it exists. Like, I can delete this if you're really uncomfortable with it. But again, just to his credit, he's like, no, I think, you know, he was like, I was not excited you were there in the moment, but he's like, this is what the story needs, is to show that it's not a straight line, and that you can indulge the ups and indulge the downs, but ultimately keep moving. And he's like, the story needs it, so I think we should keep it and use it.
That's an incredible story, because AJ, honestly, I remember I was up in the press box at a different vantage point than you, having the exact same thoughts. Oh, that's got to be a great moment for Landy. Right? The fans still love him. He still gets, even though he's in a suit, listen to the cheer from the crowd.
Yeah.
Wow, what an awesome moment for him. So, you know, to see it for me, you know, for me, almost a full year later, like, holy smokes. I had the exact, the exact same thought that you did of, wow, what a great moment for him through all the hard work. What a great moment. And hey, maybe he's working back closer. And to find out that, like you said, it was the opposite. It's an amazing moment to watch because of how real it is. Like you just said, like he said, like, that's part of the experience. And if you only tell the story through the lens of like, oh, here's when it went well, and here's when he got his first workout in and got back on like, that's not the real experience. And I mean, good on you for being able to capture that moment, because I'm sure that, like you said, that was a tough moment for you. in the moment and after. And I'm sure that wasn't the only moment that was like that, but yeah, that definitely seemed like a tough one just because of how unexpected it was.
Yeah, I mean, just really caught me off guard, and we tried to replicate that in the edit of like, oh, this must be a super positive thing, you know, and it's just kind of having like the rug, like I felt like the rug was pulled out from under me for my experience, and I think Gabe probably felt that same thing. You know, he loves Ballerina, he loves the Avalanche fan base, loves, you know, all of it, you know. So I don't think he was like, oh, I'm upset with these people. He's like, I'm upset that I can't be out there.
Right.
You know, we talked very candidly of there's this perception that professional athletes, elite athletes, are superhuman, and they are. You know, I mean, it's wild what a NHL player goes through, right?
Yeah. If you've ever seen Gabe Landeskog without a shirt on, you can convince me that he's a superhuman.
Yeah, very easily, right? It was like, that's not how that's supposed to work, right? But I think it takes somebody like Gabe who's, you know, who has a good position in the NHL, who's very smart, and doesn't, you know, vulnerability is a strength, you know. And I don't think that's been the case a lot of times. And I think it takes somebody of like, I don't think, like you said, anybody in the world who's seen Gabe play or in personal life, think that he's not one of the strongest people in the league, right?
Yep.
He's 205 pounds,
Yeah.
probably skates like a demon, you know, throws hands like it's the 80s.
Yeah.
And so like, yeah, I think he's kind of one of the few people who can open up in that way. And I think, I think regular folks, you know, you, me, kind of need to see that of like, oh, okay. It's okay to have bad days. It's okay to be vulnerable, and talk about your emotions really candidly. I just think only Gabe.
Yeah. And it's okay to struggle. And to your point, to see someone like Gabe, who, you know, I know a lot of people in the hockey world, you know, he's a guy that you do kind of put on a pedestal, not because of just how good of a player he is, but what a good person he is, what a good leader he is. I mean, you know, we kind of laugh amongst Avs media because, like, you know, over the 3 years that he was gone, we've had, you know, that media room is turned over, and there's people who were in that room who had never covered Gabe before.
Yeah.
And they say, like, the way that people talk about him, like, I hope I get the chance to cover, you know, and now, you know, thankfully, you know, everyone has had the opportunity to, and, you know, hopefully that continues in the future. But like the way that Jared Bednar talks about him, the way that Joe Sakic, Chris McFarland talk about him, you know, any of the hockey ops staff, the way that they talk about him, the players, he kind of exists in this realm all on his own, you know, within the organization. And if that guy can have these moments of struggle and vulnerability, and come out the other side of it, like you said, I think that was something where, you know, my wife and I have been watching the series as it's come out, and you know, for us, we lost my wife's dad last year to Alzheimer's. Thank you, and you know. So it's been a tough last year, and there were multiple times as we were watching it, my wife would draw parallels to, you know, the again, just the hard days, the hard moments, you know, whether they be physical or mental setbacks in whatever you're dealing with, of just like, I can relate to that. Yeah. I can relate to that struggle. And like I said, if you can see someone like Gabe Landeskog go through it and come out the other side, I think that's something that, whether you're a hockey fan or not, that resonates with everybody.
Yeah. And I think that was kind of the point, you know, of just show the human side of it. You know, I think we idolize sports figures for sometimes good reasons, sometimes bad reasons. And this is one of the good reasons, right? And it's funny, you know, you mentioned like the sports media and, you know, the way people speak of Gabe. You know, the amount of people who've come up to me, you know, since the show's come out, and they're like, all right, what's like the tea? You know, like, what's the real insider's look? And like, yeah, hand to God, that the person I think everyone sees is the person I see, you know, in making the documentary. Like we read his journals, his personal journals together. And I've spent, yeah, a lot of time with him, and like, yeah, he loves his family, loves his wife, loves playing hockey, you know, wants to help others, is like, that's, yeah, just constantly like, what can I do to help? Who can we talk to? You know, all day.
Yeah.
Every day. It's like, yeah, that's how you get to that. It's not a thing. It's just who he is, you know?
Yeah. And the interactions that I've had with him, I was lucky enough to cover Gabe for a little bit pre-pandemic, because then after COVID, everything kind of changed with the way the media interacted with, you know, everybody for a couple of years there. But, you know, so I've gotten to know him just a little bit. And even in I'd say the last year when he's been around the team a lot more, I mean, just like he will never, you know, pass up an opportunity just to stop and, hey, how you doing? How are things going? You know, what have you been up to? What do you got working on? You know, just always, I think I was in Buffalo last year, and I was going down to get some food. I was coming down from my room, and the elevator stopped on like the fifth floor, and you know, who was stopping to pick up? Doors open, and Gabe Landeskog down there. I was like, oh, Gabe, what's going on? And you know, I think he was going to someone else because he got off on like the second floor or whatever, and just, you know, hey Jesse, great to see you, man. How you doing? Blah blah blah. Good to see you. Good. Oh, glad to see you're traveling. Good to see you on the road. All right, cool. See you later. Blah blah blah. And again, just like he could have gotten in there and, hey, how you doing?
Look at his phone.
Right. But, you know, just chatted you up, and just such a nice guy. So what I'm saying here is my every experience I've had with Gabe is in line with what I saw who the guy is in the documentary. So I'm with you. I don't know if there's
actually is that guy.
Right.
You know, he's 2 phones, he's blowing up all the time, you know, especially as, you know, ramping back up towards playing.
Yeah.
But still constantly present.
Yeah.
You know, if you're talking to him, he's talking to you.
100%.
You know, even though, you know, there could be people right on the peripheral who are also trying to talk to him and stuff, but he's like sitting and listening.
Yeah.
You know, it's wild. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. All right, you've been very generous with your time. I got 2 more for you, and then I'll let you go. Two separate moments that I just want to know what your perspective was like on them. One of them was that game up in Loveland for the Eagles. Just the crowd pop for him in a building that's so small, how loud it was.
Yeah.
I guess just what was that like for you? And then the goal in game 4 at Ball Arena. I know you were there for both those moments. I guess just having been with him through every step of the way, what were those couple moments like for you?
It was really fascinating. Like, because we didn't really talk about it for 2 years, you know, like, you know, I think we talk about it in the show, like episode 4, just throw the calendar away. I think that he ran into that issue of X amount of days, you know, the doc says, oh, it takes 10 months to recover from this. And he goes, well, in my head, like, I'm an athlete. I'm going to do it in 8, you know, and like letting that dictate. Of like, oh, you know, trade deadline's coming. I want to be back by this. I want to be back by that. And then reverse engineering where he shouldn't be health-wise. And that led to at least 2 of the setbacks, right? And so even like coming out to that, 2 weeks out, I was like, you know, are you playing? And he's like, I'll know more tomorrow. Yeah. But just stopping at tomorrow. So it was never like, we never sat around and like, I would try to ask him, and he's like, I visit it. I'm like, it'll be great. It'll be so exciting. You know, it'll be so fun to see Mel and Linnea and Luke on the glass and all that. But he's like, that's not where I'm at today. I got to be where my boots are today. So I had no idea like what was really going to happen other than like, it's a long time waiting. And I was really nervous and anxious. Just knowing how much he'd been through and how hard he worked, and also just like having to obsess over it, right? At that point, we were still filming the 5th episode, and we were rolling them out every week. So I've been doing this 80 hours a week for 7 months, just thinking about Gabe and Gabe's knee in this documentary, right?
Yeah.
So it was like really intense for my seat of like, no one really knew how the knee was going to hold up, you know? And I think at the time, the expectation was play a little rest, you know? And
Yep.
so no one expected really the Saturday game. But he came out and like exceeded all expectations. Like we have all the quantified metrics, you know, from the skates and everything like that. And he was top 15%. He had been on the ice in 3 years.
Yeah.
That makes no sense, you know? So it's just like a lot of folks are just like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Okay, we're chilling up to like excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember in that, I believe it was the first game of the weekend for the Eagles. He was involved in like a little bit of a kind of a
scrum,
tangle
yeah.
up. Yeah. And he went down and there was like a collective like, and he got up and jumped back into play and everyone even cheered. Like him
Yeah.
getting back up and getting back into play. There was a small like, okay, all right, he's good. And that I remember being the moment where I was like, all right, he might be good. And then he gets in the scrum and he's pulling the guy
he's
out and
headlock and
yeah, and you know, it was just like, oh man, he might be back. And then he scores the goal the next night. I just remember for him or for that night, like thinking to myself, like, I just want this to go well for him.
yeah.
Like, you know, you deal with if he can come back and play and all that stuff later. Like, I just want him to go out there and have a good night. And I think, man, on several different instances, it just felt like, oh, well, I hope just this happened. And he exceeded that. Like you said, just
Yeah.
felt like he exceeded expectations all over the board. And I'm sure, and maybe he's told you this, but like I'm sure even for himself on some of those.
Yeah. And I think, you know, we talked about it after the Eagles game. So I was like kind of hanging out with him, you know, prepping for the road trip to Dallas and everything. I was like, you know, I think one of the first, maybe second plays, you know, at Eagles on that Friday night, he went into the corner and hit something. And I think everybody kind of collectively went, here we go.
Yeah.
You know, big guy goes in the corner against another big guy, you know, and hopped him and skated out. Okay. You know, and I was kind of, you know, and he kind of threw some hands and he took a penalty and stuff like that. And I was like, you know, was any of that like signaling either, you know, looking down the barrel of the playoffs to Dallas or just other players or to some of the critics who've, you know, done some chatter of like,
Yeah.
I'm back, watch, I can hit this person, I can get in the scrum. And he's like, no, not at all. I was like, really? And he's like, no. He's like, I thought about, you know, doing this, doing that. And he's like, and then the puck dropped and he's like, just hockey brain took over. And he's like, I'm going to go get that puck.
Just play.
It's just play. And I think, you know, that was really great. You know, the difference between watching game 3 at Avs, game 4 Avs is, I think that game 4 goal was so nice. I think it's just as like a hockey fan, right? As a longtime Avs fan of like, oh, Gabe's back in his office, battling in front of the net, you know,
Yep.
taking, you know, pushing folks around. It was great to see.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that was, well, you just poked a huge flaw in what I always, because I've been saying for weeks, I was like, he's going to go out there and lay a huge hit to send a message. And no, he was just playing.
Yeah, he's just, yeah, I think he's, you know, instincts just took over. It just, that never goes away.
Yeah.
So he just goes for it.
Well, and that was the thing that I think a lot of us either learned or had reaffirmed is there is a level of like riding a bicycle to this where it just doesn't go away for a guy like Gabe.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's gotten to the position he's got in the NHL because he can sense where that puck is behind him, where that next player is, you know, the things of like hearing, oh, that skates over here. This person's coming up from this angle and stuff like that. And also just, he has a hockey brain.
Yeah.
You know, he studies hockey his whole life. He's very intelligent about it. You know, watches, you know, I think even before the road trip, just on the iPad, watching Dallas stuff, just doing homework. You know, that never goes away. The knee doesn't affect that. You know, that's why he's so good at what he does.
Well, and as soon as we started talking to him after he came back and he was cleared to, you know, media scrums and all that stuff, that was something that was going through my brain was like, he just jumped right back into like, no, we got to do this. We weren't here enough. We didn't, you know, do this enough. We got to do more of this, less of that. You know, and he just kind of jumped right back into it. Last one I've got for you here. Do you have a favorite moment? I know episode 6 is still to come, so we, the public, haven't seen everything quite yet. But do you have a favorite moment through the last, you know, 3 years of doing this and being with Gabe?
That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, I think we're probably at maybe 45, 50 days filming, 60. That's just like a lot of time,
Yeah.
you know? There are some like great moments I almost like watching his kids grow up.
Okay.
You know, like when I met Luke and Linnea, Luke was 2, Linnea was 3.
Yeah.
And so like kind of talking, you know, Luke's like ambling around a bit. And now, hey, Luke, how's it going? Oh, hey, AJ. You know, like,
Yeah.
that's wild to see. Wild to see. But no, I mean, overall, it's just been the whole project. You know, like Gabe and I are kind of constantly texting, here's clips, you know, here's this still. And, you know, oh, what do you think about this? And I'm thinking about doing this. And he has like just great input. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole, honestly, just like the whole, I think just the making of has been my favorite thing of, you know, I think one of the things that maybe is a bit off the radar in the doc world is like Nathaniel Rateliff, who's a hometown boy, gave access to his entire library. So all the songs are Nathaniel Rateliff or Nathaniel Rateliff and the Night Sweats, which is not something that he had to do.
Yeah.
You know, like we talked to him and his manager, you know, or like, you know, we have like functionally no budget. You know, our production budget is just this one person and one camera following around. And he's like, yeah, that's totally fine, you know, because it's more about like community and mental health and all of that. And, you know, so it just makes the editing process super interesting. We're doing a for-your consideration campaign for some primetime Emmys. For editing, writing, cinematography, and direction, you know, and a lot of those are nods to Gabe's investment in the project, right? Yeah, and so I just think, yeah, my favorite thing is just putting in the work and just doing it, and the opportunities that we get to do as, you know, folks in the media and story is like, yeah, just hang out and do the best you can.
Well, I think that's a great answer, and I can just speak for myself. I think it's been an outstanding watch so far, and I'm looking forward to the last episode. And I won't ask you for any spoilers on it because I'm just going to wait to see it here in the next few weeks. But AJ, genuinely, thank you so much for taking the time to come down and chat about this. I appreciate the work that you've done so much, and I know people have loved watching it. So thank you for helping to bring this to life and just come talk about it a bit, and look forward to watching the last episode.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it comes out June 8th or 9th.
Perfect.
So we're on game 1 of the Stanley Cup.
All right, can't wait, and I'm sure we'll be talking more again soon.
Hopefully.
Thanks so much. AJ Oscarson, Fresh Tape Media, A Clean Sheet with Gabe Landeskog, the man behind the lens. All right. Meghan, I made the joke to you before, I'm sure to the surprise of no one. When I was doing that interview, I was like, 20 minutes, 43. But just a lot of interesting stuff that AJ had to say.
Absolutely. It reminds me of the Scott Wedgwood interview that we promised would also be maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and it was not.
35, yeah. You know, Meghan, there was a comment in here from Alyssa that says, you know, he's confirming that it's easy for Landeskog to come off as authentic because that's just kind of all that's who he is. It was just so great having Gabe back around the room again here, you know, for the back part of the season in the playoffs, because he is that good of a guy.
Yeah, I shared part of this on Pucks and Prosecco yesterday, but I, during the 2022 season, was credentialed and covered the team, but they still pulled players to the podium. And so I didn't get to interview Gabriel Landeskog one-on-one. And so when he made his return, it was the first time that I ever really got to talk with him a little bit more directly.
Yeah.
And I still get nervous asking players questions. It varies from player to player, and it depends on the player themselves, to be honest with you. There's some players I feel really comfortable asking
like
questions. You know what's funny is there are players that have given me a worse time than Nate, that make me more nervous than Nate.
Yeah.
I actually hold Nate in a higher regard because I can expect what Nate's going to give a little bit more. You can read his body language and use your skill of perception to pick up on that kind of thing. Nate actually is not high on that list of guys who like make me feel a little nervous, because there are guys who might give you a hard time and catches you off guard. Anyways, where this is going is I never felt nervous to ask Gabriel Landeskog a question. Immediately felt such an ease and a comfort, and that is completely a testament to Landeskog for making me feel so at ease immediately.
He just has that effect on everyone. You know, like I mentioned in the conversation with AJ, another big shout out to AJ Oscarson for carving out some time to come chat with us. I hope they win some Emmys for it. They deserve to for that.
It's an amazing piece.
It's an amazing piece. It's been great, and still one more episode, like he said, coming out right around game 1. But you know, like I told him, they're like, while he's been gone, like there is, and Corey Massasak from the Post, again, someone who came into this market when Gabe Landeskog was already out. Like we talk about this all the time. Like there's this kind of like protective bubble around the way that people even talk about Gabe Landeskog around Avs facilities and stuff. And he is just kind of this, he's not a player. He's not a coach. He's not in management. He's just like Gabe. Like he's just kind of on this, in this different sphere. And like you said, it's all warranted. He just has that effect that you're talking about on everyone around him. And it's, glad he's back around.
Yeah. I think it shows through in the docuseries so much too. I went back during this interview to find what Landeskog said after the Eagles conditioning stint about why he wanted to do a clean sheet. And he talked about how it's such a unique injury and he wanted to show the human side of it, specifically the identity questions that are born from something like this, because he's seen comeback videos from athletes working their way, and you see videos of them working out, and it just didn't really capture that identity portion. And it required being extremely vulnerable. He wasn't always sure that this was something he was going to want to put out there. Ultimately decided it was too important not to, and he wasn't sure how people were going to react to it. You know, he wasn't thinking of it in those terms. He just saw the value that it could bring to someone in being so vulnerable. And I think that came through in what made the final cut, because there were incredibly raw moments.
Yeah. I love that call out. And, you know, I even remember him that night after the Eagles game, Gabe saying, like, you know, I did stop at one point and think, you know, he called out like the imposter syndrome stuff. Like, does anybody even care about this? And that is the part of what I love about what you just said, what AJ talked about, of like, yeah, this isn't just for someone who's recovering from an injury. This is for people who are going through, you know, the tough parts of life and trying to find the strength to keep moving. And you know, I talked to AJ about, like, you know, we lost my wife's dad last year, and you know, just seeing my wife go through that stuff. And we've actually been watching a clean sheet together, and there's been a lot of moments that she is called out of, like, I can relate to that,
connected with her,
you know, because like that's, you start to feel better. And then, you know, my wife's instance, like what we talked about when we were watching, like you start feeling better and you find a, you know, a little token that, you know, was what belonged to her dad, a little note or, you know, something like that. And it sets you back, you know, in relation to this stuff. So I think he nailed it, because I do think him working out and in the gym, that wouldn't have been as interesting. It wouldn't have been as relatable, but the way that they pulled the curtain back on all of it was just amazing.
Yeah, it would have left out key details in that story. And I think the omission of those details would have been inauthentic. So
I agree. I
am so glad that he was so vulnerable with everybody, because he never needed to be. He didn't have to do that.
100%. I hope, like I said, I hope they win some awards for it, because of all those reasons. They deserve it for sure. We'll post that full interview as well, just by itself, but it'll also live right here in the pod. So you'll be able to find it audio only after this, but you'll also be able to find the interview on our YouTube channel. We'll be clipping it out, all those types of things. So big thanks again to AJ Oscarson and Fresh Tape Media for coming down here and hanging out with us and just peeling the curtain back on pulling the curtain back. So it was great. Megan, let's get into a little bit of playoff stuff here to round out the week before we get out of here for today. Eastern Conference Final, Western Conference Final are in full swing. We don't have to spend a lot of time on either one of these. I want to start with the Dallas Stars and Edmonton Oilers, though. 14 power play goals through 14 playoff games for the Dallas Stars. they're struggling at 5-on-5. They have a shot differential of more than minus 100 at 5-on-5. Analytically, I'm not going to say they're getting caved in, but their opponents have definitely controlled the lion's share of the 5-on-5 play. But if somebody talked to me about this weekend, their power play is going at the right time, and their special teams are coming up big right when they need them. They find themselves up 1-0 with game 2 tonight.
Yeah, the power play part of it is an important part. It is also important to recognize that they've had a really good kill. And so it is
Yes.
both special teams
You're
that
right.
have helped to keep them afloat. And this isn't me trying to cape for the Dallas Stars. I think it is concerning that so much of their offense has been generated on the power play specifically. That is a fallible process, but it's also otherwise pretty tight. But what I will say is they have the most power play goals of any team in these playoffs so far. Obviously, they've advanced the furthest too, so more opportunities along the way there. Yep. But a second-ranked power play in these playoffs so far in terms of percentage with a second-ranked PK. So I want to make mention of that too, because this is where Edmonton can struggle, right? They have 3 power play opportunities in game 1. They only convert on 1. Dallas converts on 3 of 4. It's a little bit hard to imagine that being sustainable over the course of the series, especially seeing Dallas having been shut out now 3 times through these playoffs. You do wonder what the rest of this series looks like. But what is interesting is you go back to the first and the second period in game 1 for Edmonton Dallas, and this was kind of controlled by Edmonton. It's a tight margin, so I'm not going to say the ice was so tilted in Edmonton's favor, but they let in the shots battle, and Dallas came away with it in the third because of lack of discipline on behalf of Edmonton. You know, a late second period penalty and then 2 additional penalties early in the third gave Dallas that opportunity. And here's where I will give them some credit, right? There's that lack of discipline on Edmonton's side, but then there's the killer instinct
100%.
On Dallas. And they really know how to seize those moments when they get them, and they almost count on it, right? Like they know they're never down and out because that moment, whatever form it takes, is going to come for them.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's by creation, right? Like maybe they're baiting Edmonton into taking some of these penalties. But also I think it was a lack of discipline on their part. But the fact that Dallas has that knack for putting games away when those moments arise, even if they didn't necessarily dominate through that point, is a strength of that team. And so, you know, just looking at the Eastern Conference final and seeing what Florida is made of, it's hard for me to even see that Stanley Cup final if we're looking at a Dallas Florida, because Florida just feels like it's cut from an entirely different cloth than any team in the league this year. I will say with my full chest, this version of Florida, I'm not sure Colorado would have been able to survive a Stanley Cup final against this Florida team, even with the strength of the roster construction for Colorado that obviously ran into its own Dallas problems in the first round. Florida is just that good. So that's where I'm already starting to compare Dallas, talking about them in terms of being a cup final team, but I'm still not sure they're as complete as what I'm seeing on the Florida side of it. So they've got these strengths I don't want to take away from, with special teams and a goaltender who continues to be good for them, right? Like we haven't seen Ottinger totally fall apart the way we have in past playoff series where you've gotten a different Ottinger round by round. And so it's another strength of this team, and at fuller health too, they are a little bit more complete. But I think there are some blemishes for Dallas with relying on special teams as much as they do.
I just want to quickly go back to the point that you made about how they're almost even like expecting it. When we were in that building for game 7, you could feel that. You didn't even have to be in the building. You just see it in their play, in the buzz from the crowd. They started, getting they score that first goal, and it was just like, oh shit.
They're not sweating it.
Right. They just felt confident. Even when they weren't in control of the game, it was like, this'll tip for us at some point. And there's been a moment in every game, it feels like, where they've done that. Like in every game that they've played where they've done that. And like you said, you give them credit for having that killer instinct, that whatever you want to call it, they've certainly got the it thing right now when it comes to the man advantage. But I do want to talk about, to me, Megan, the story right now is the Florida Panthers. Like you said, this team looks like they're just on another level it doesn't even look like they are breaking a sweat right now through 2 games against Carolina Hurricanes.
Florida is a masterclass in roster construction
Yeah.
because you look at the percentage of the cap that is allocated to the top of the lineup, and they get contributions from the entirety of their lineup. Now every defenseman has a point through these playoffs, and so they're getting back-end contributions as well from the top of the lineup. Sam Bennett has been kind of insane just early into this Eastern Conference final, but through these playoffs too has been excellent for them. And on the back end, getting those contributions has been huge too. And so I think it's such a well-balanced attack that it is just so suffocating. And so even a Brenda Moore attention to detail Carolina team that is very sound defensively, I have such respect for what Jacob Slavin individually does. Even that attention to detail defensively from the whole team on behalf of Carolina is really hard to contend with Florida because of how well balanced the attack is. They're getting steady goaltending, which is just good enough, and they're difficult to play against. You know, Paul Maurice was talking with Jackie Redmond in the intermission for game 2, and he was talking about how the bench is kind of leading itself. It's a very hands-off moment at this point in the playoffs for this team. And it reminds me of the 2022 Avs and Nazem Kadri's comments, and even Bednar reaffirming those comments about how the self-motivation of the group had skyrocketed. Like they really didn't need that message in between periods from the coach because everybody understood it. And so that's what's coming through to me with this Florida team is it's a 5-man unit on the ice every shift. Everybody's working together. They understand their role and they're executing to the most perfect detail. And that's why it works. And it's also very hard to contend with that because you look at the 5v5 possession numbers and it's shades of Dallas, Colorado all over again, with Carolina having decent possession through both games. You know, they don't win the shots battle in the second game, but they come away with it in the first. There's certainly some holes in Carolina's game that are being exposed in this series. So I want to give them credit for what they do in possessing the puck 5v5 and some of the defensive things that they do, but it is fallible, kind of like the Colorado series. Some of their star players, just not enough execution and not enough shot volume coming from Carolina. And I think it's just the way in which Florida comes at them in waves, and that the way in which they're so bought in.
In game 2, what impressed me, I mean, so many things have impressed me about this Florida Panthers team, but like Carolina under Rod Brindamore, that's a volume shooting team. They like to control the puck and they put pucks to the net. Heading into the third period, they had 8 shots last night.
When your team shots leaders are Dmitry Orlov and Jack Roslovic, you have a problem. Jarvis, Stankoven, Svechnikov, 0 shots on goal when it was all said and done for game 2. They get shut out 5-0. That result reflects that issue in a really glaring way. And, you know, there's a little bit of a third period push from Carolina, but they had 2 power play opportunities they didn't convert on. And the other story of this series so far and kind of through this point has been the penalty kill. They had one of the best penalty kills in these playoffs, well, in the regular season. And through this point, it has been a weakness for Carolina. And so this is where I feel like a broken record, deferring to special teams yet again, but it decides playoffs so much of the time. And this is obviously felt from the Avs perspective with respect to the power play and the struggles that it had.
Game 2 of the Western Conference Final is tonight. Mikko Rantanen, Dallas Stars, Connor McDavid, Edmonton Oilers. I'll be tuning in and catching that one for sure to see if Edmonton can stay out of the box. That was the joke. We were all up at the Eagles game Friday as that game was going on, and Corey made the joke to me. I said, you see that 3 power play goals? He goes, I'm not even concerned with how do you give up 3 power play goals that quickly. How do you take 3 penalties that quickly when you're trying to hold on to a lead? But we'll see what happens here tonight. That is not the only playoff game going on tonight, Megan. Just up north, up at Blue Arena, the Colorado Eagles will be looking to stave off elimination as their backs are against the wall against the Abbotsford Canucks after losing 2-1 just a couple nights ago on Wednesday night with, I believe it was a minute 14 seconds left in the first overtime. Megan, it's backs are against the wall for the Colorado Eagles tonight.
Yeah. I love the expression pressure is a privilege. You hear it used a lot, so I don't want it to lose meaning, but this is a resilient group and they've had the upper hand through this point in the playoffs. They are even in this series technically the higher seed, but it's 1-2 in the division. This is two heavyweights going at it, two of the best teams in the division, and as you mentioned, two of the among the best teams in the league
3 and
this
5.
year.
Yep.
So it's reflected in how this series has played out. I personally felt the Eagles were the better team in Game 3, especially in the overtime period in terms of the chances that they created near game winners back to back. Really challenging she-laughs.
That play, this is going to be bad podcasting because it's going to be hard. That play that Jason Megna made on the forecheck in overtime, where he came out of nowhere and picked off a pass and set himself up on a breakaway from 30, 40 feet out. I thought that was the game right there. Big credit to Artur Shelovs for coming up with a save, but like you said, the Eagles felt like they were all over the place.
And I think in that Megna attempt, Phillips even tried for a rebound opportunity shortly after. And so you could see where fatigue had set in a little bit for Abbotsford. Both teams definitely, but especially Abbotsford. And that's how Megna was able to pick off the puck. Phillips was getting sticks on pucks and taking them away. And he's not a huge hulking player, but he was taking away pucks and creating opportunities and just driving pucks to the net. And so it was a really hard way for them to lose that game because there were periods where they fell behind in the shots battle, but once they came ahead in it, they continued to hold it onto it. And so I have a lot of faith in the Eagles. I do think it is a bit of a coin flip too, because Abbotsford is a good team with a say in it. I think it's hard to send a team like the Eagles home. They were down going into the third period against the San Jose Barracuda, and it was Game 4. It was the chance to advance. So they weren't on the brink of elimination, but they had a lot to play for. They tie the game, come back to win it. I've seen them be resilient in moments of adversity all season long, but especially in that last Barracuda series. So they're in a slightly different position. Now they're on the team. They're on the brink of elimination. They're in that spot. So the pressure is high, but I think I started to see some of the best hockey out of all of these players in that overtime period when they were playing from a little bit of place of desperation. And I think that's going to be the story of the game tonight from the drop of the puck. And so it should be exciting. And I'm expecting them to come out with their best because you look at who scored the goals in the last game, and it's John Ludwig and Jake Wise. Jake Wise, just a fun professional tryout success
3-2.
story.
I said 2-1 earlier. It was 3-2. Sorry.
I didn't even catch it. So
you said it was a fun story. Yeah.
Yeah, he get goals in back-to-back games in these playoffs, and these are really his first ever Calder Cup playoffs. And he's a PTO success story turned into a contract with the Eagles. He's on both special teams. This has been a really cool story for him, right? You've got Ludwig getting on the score sheet. Brian Yoon came off a multi-point game back in Game 2, stealing one on the road in Abbotsford. They're getting contributions from all over the lineup. But, I want to see the top guys really show up tonight. Not to say that they haven't, over the course of these playoffs. It's just they're getting contributions from all over the lineup. I want to see all hands on deck, and I want to see the top guys, especially what we saw in that overtime period, extremely hungry from the start of this one.
I'm trying to find it. It doesn't look like was it the same player who scored to tie it for Abbotsford as for who won it?
No, different players.
Because they both did the same celebration.
Confusing.
Well, they like where they went to the glass and
oh, I didn't see that.
Did this, and I was like, you can't do that twice. One of you can do it, and it's like, ooh, damn, that's ice cold. When the second person does it, it's like, boo, think for yourself, come up with something else. And I was just wondering if it was the same guy because that would have been even more embarrassing, but it wasn't.
That's an excellent call out.
But it stood out to me that they both did
bully them.
They both did the oh, I can't hear you. It's like, you can only do that once. Not cool the second time.
Yeah, that's bad hockey karma, actually. Right. We're definitely playing Game 5.
Yeah. And then they were chirping at fans as they were walking off. I don't know if you saw that. They were chirping it because
hello?
The Abbotsford players were chirping back. Yeah, it was pretty. I don't know.
That's so interesting because unlike the Barracuda, still hated that series. Hate the way that they played. I don't have that same issue with Abbotsford. It's a really normal series.
That's kind of where I was driving at with that line of questioning. Megan, let's wrap for today. We should have talked a little bit about Team Canada. Maybe we can come back at that next week, but maybe the biggest upset in men's world championship history. Denmark upsets Canada 2-1 yesterday. It's Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, Macklin Celebrini, Travis Konechny, Marc-Andre Fleury. Like, there was a lot of good players on that team. Jordan Binnington in net for the game yesterday. Pretty shocking loss. No doubt about it.
Yeah, that's not the way that Fleury should have been sent off.
And he was going for the triple gold club. Had they won, that would have been because he has a cup, an Olympic gold, never won a world championship, so he would have been triple gold. And womp womp.
Sometimes I think hockey was a mistake. Now I'm sad. Now I'm bummed. I'm just kidding. I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
Gonna go get some of that sun. I need to go get some sun on these dogs. It sounded like in the chat, so I'm gonna go do that. That's gonna do it for this weekend. We will be off on Monday for the holiday. The studio is closed, so we won't have a show. We'll be back at it. P&P on Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, we have a couple things, so I'm not sure which one we're doing yet, but they're both fun, so I'm excited.
I'll say we've got some fun content banked, so keep an eye out for that. But she's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. We got Mark behind the glass today. You guys all know and love Mark. You guys probably hadn't heard from him in a couple weeks. He is back there making everything happen as always. That's going to do it, guys. I'm Jesse. She's Meghan. Trusted American Mortgage. Go to trustedamerican.com right now. Check them out. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon. See ya.